Hello. Oh, look, we both remembered to
Hi,
change.
everybody. Say what now?
We both remembered to change our outfits.
Hey!
I always remember to change my outfit at like the last possible second, though.
I did going to get my water, so I was good this week.
I see. It's always like I'm like sitting here and I'm like waiting for the countdown, and it's like 10 seconds left. I'm like, shit, I didn't switch my outfit. Oh my god.
Hurry!
Yeah, really. I was like, load up the website. Oh my god. Find it. It's like further down in the list than I want it to be in like my files.
No.
I'm like,
You gotta
But-
get your files organized.
No. They are organized, but there's like 8 different, avatars outfits.
Oh dear.
So it's just longer. Come on, how many avatar outfits you? What? Do you have a folder with your avatar outfits?
I have a folder with my avatar outfits, and then I have a folder inside the folder of the avatar outfits. No Clip Studio Paint. I don't want to see what's new. And
This is what my avatar
I
folder looks like.
create another folder that has retired avatars. So Wander's song is in there, Emma is in there.
I see.
Nice and organized.
That's
you know?
pretty smart. I have this, but on top of the regular avatars, I also have the ones for the videos.
Oh, okay.
And the reason that I don't put them in even more nested
I see why
folders,
your thing is so cluttered.
and the reason I don't even put them in and then I also have like the edit files, right? And all this sort of stuff. And the reason I don't put them in even more nested folders is because when I'm editing videos, it's like I have to go between yours and Dylan's and mine. So the more nested folders,
boy,
the more
that's a lot.
clicks that I have to go into, and it's just annoying. So it's either be relatively organized and not have to deal with all the clicks, or, be only moderately organized. The whole thing. It's a whole deal.
It really does sound like a whole process.
Yes. You know what
Yoy.
feels really good? When I look at the later entries that I was working on before it came out and realized that, okay, my art style did get better during the whole thing. I was like, oh, maybe it's just not good the whole time. No, it's good here. We're good
Yeah,
here.
dude, your art style has evolved.
Yes, but remember, I'm like making backgrounds of like really, really early ones, entries like 12, and then I'm also like fixing the ones that are even earlier than that. And so I'm like, okay, maybe my art didn't improve as much as I thought until after I stopped working on the thing, like a crazy 10 minutes. Like, no, looking at Ferrix here, looking at this. It's like, okay, no, we good. Everybody looks good.
You've done good. Come on.
Yes. Look at that. Love me some Ferrix. Ferrix boy.
He's so lovely.
Indeed. I'm very happy.
I'm
Expressions.
actually, working on entry 17.
Yeah, would you like to stream it?
I was considering.
We
Yeah, it's
can.
been a while
It
since
has
people
been a
have.
while. I'm
I'll
gonna drink
set
more
that
water.
up.
Yes.
Share screen.
So just like I'm forcing Mars to show her coloring the comic, today we are talking about forcing inflection in dialogue, written word.
Yes. Well, I can definitely go into what that is and maybe help clarify what exactly it is we're talking about. Because forcing inflection, you kind of hear that and you're like, what the hell could that possibly mean? I think that's as good a segue as any.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we say forcing inflection, a better way of saying it, and forgive me if I stumble a little bit saying it, I am coloring and talking at the same time. I did not realize how challenging of a task this would be. When we say forcing inflection, what we're talking about is when I'm writing dialogue, how do I ensure that you as the reader, oh my god, yep, there goes my brain. How do I make sure that you as the reader are hearing the tone, the emotion of what I'm imagining? How do I convey that in simple speech bubbles, there's actually a lot to it. And some of it actually goes further into the script than it does the dialogue. But I think the easiest place to start would be the dialogue, because that's where you are, quote unquote, hearing the character speak. Now, with a comic, it's a different medium. So if you're doing, like, let's say, a show or something that has voice acting, well, that you just tell your voice actor, okay, here's how I want the scene to go. Here's the tone I'm trying to convey. Here's the emotion. Do that. And that's what they do. Definitely not easy, because it's a different method of conveying that information. But it's spoken, it's heard, and you don't have to do much of your own interpretation to understand what is trying to be conveyed. Now, with a comic, like I said before, you only have a little speech bubble to work with. So there's only so much you can do. Now, already off the bat, you've kind of done a little more work than you've realized. Now, what the hell do I mean by that? Well, we've had this discussion before, talking about the way different characters speak, the way the words they use, perhaps a dialect or an accent that you're conveying in the written word. So already your audience kind of has an idea of what your character sounds like based on their word usage. And that could certainly affect how a scene is conveyed and how the emotion in that scene is conveyed. Because there's a difference between saying, I got to go, well, nobody says that, but let's pretend that they do. Okay, how about this? I have to go to the library, and that would be one way of saying that, versus I have to go to the library. Have to, because you would write it out in the speech bubble, I would probably write it out as HAFTA with an apostrophe. But that conveys a little bit more urgency. That kind of makes you think, okay, this character is very either eager to get there, or maybe they're concerned about something. That would come down to the context of the scene as well. That's another point that I'll get into a little bit later, because I do want to kind of go down the list here and make sure I cover everything. So already you've kind of done a little bit of the work. If you know what your character's word usage is, your audience has an idea of what they sound like, and they can kind of envision how they'd sound in certain scenes. If you're trying to emphasize a point, there's an example that is used in phonetics all the time. It's a sentence, I want a cookie. And what you do is, depending on which word you give stress to, which word you give emphasis to, changes the meaning of the sentence. If you put emphasis on I want a cookie, well, that's focusing on who wants the cookie. It's me. I want that cookie. But if you put emphasis on the word want, I want that cookie, you're emphasizing what you want, essentially. It changes the meaning of the sentence, is the point I'm trying to make. And this is very easily conveyed. And you've probably seen cases of this before, where the author will use either italics or they'll use bold print to convey an emphasized word. I believe we've actually done it in our comic. It should be
both.
in a...
Yeah, we use both.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It should be an entry that's already there. Wow, I have not colored anything since talking.
That's what happens.
I see why you struggle so much, Ori.
Yep.
I have not colored shit since I started talking.
It's a brain thing. But yeah,
really
Caliber in the very first, in the prologue, is bolded at very least. It might be italicized as well, but it's very least bolded.
Okay, so that's actually a good example, and I'm going to use that because in that scene, Hotsun is bargaining with Olus to get a ship. And Ori, if I can ask you a favor, I'm not looking at chat at all right now. I don't have the ability to pull it up. So if anyone asks any questions, like, I promise I am not ignoring you guys. I just can't.
Yeah, if you want me to interrupt, I have Anima says
yes, please.
Anima says that is in the way to make is making clearer by facial expressions and very clear context around specific dialogue.
Absolutely. And Anima, you are spot on. That was actually going to be the point I would start to get into once I had covered dialogue, because dialogue is pretty basic. I feel like there's a little to cover there, but for the most part, if you read books, if you participate in any type of written media, you know what the techniques are. You know what authors do in order to emphasize their point. Now, where does the other half of the battle come in? Well, it comes in, just like you said, through the context and through the facial expressions. Now, this comes down to something I don't get to talk about all too often, at least not as frequently, is the script itself. So one of the things that Ori and I do is I come in with the dialogue first. We discuss what we want to happen in the scene, and then I write the dialogue that'll occur. And as I'm writing, I'll leave little cues behind, and I'll say something like, "This is said with a growl," or "He says this through gritted teeth." Or I'll say something about "his look should be blah, blah, blah," to give Ori a bit of a direction to go in terms of the facial expression. Because half of how you interpret what you're, I'm going to put in heavy air quotes, hearing, because nothing is being spoken. You're reading it, but you're hearing it in your mind. You're interpreting it. But that's helped by the context clues, by the facial expression. So that's one of the techniques we also use. That's very situational to a comic. And then similarly, there we go, along that same vein, I'll also leave notes about how the characters are feeling in the scene. So typically when I'm script writing, I begin with a very brief summary of what happens. Basically, here's point A, here's how we get to point B, which is the end of the scene. And in between all that, I'll write details about what the characters are feeling, how they're acting, and that provides context for the artist to kind of construct the panels in a way that helps the reader pick up on the context, which in turn affects how they read the dialogue as well. I am checking in with chat.
So, yeah, Anima asked the second question. I just don't want to interrupt you, is the whole thing. So that's why I kind of
no worries. I can find my tangent again. It's okay.
Screenplay is definitely a kind of way to do it. A little less specific than that. Just, I think, mostly to allow me to have interpretation of it.
Yeah, but that's an interesting thing. Ori, I'll go into that once you finish. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That was it. There's a second question Anima has, but I'll ask it after if you have a little bit to go on. Go ahead about the screenplay thing.
Just a little bit of a spiel, because this is a very specific way that we do our scripts. Definitely not everyone does it this way. I don't know if this is, I'm going to say, quote unquote, an industry standard, but I didn't want to stifle Ori creatively. I wanted to give her freedom to have as many panels as she wanted, do poses, expressions that she wanted, but I still wanted to give like a little bit of a nudge, like this is how
you were thinking when you wrote this.
Exactly.
So it's actually at that point more of a communication between us than a specific thing. The amount of times that I'll like change stuff in the middle. So essentially what I'll do is I take Mars's script, and then I write out what my idea for panels is. Like, okay, this line's gonna have this panel, we're gonna have these, and it sort of gives me the general idea of sort of how many panels it's gonna be and where to end off and everything like that. But then between me doing that and actually drawing the comic, it changes a lot. Yeah. It definitely changes. I don't think I'd ever not like have that.
Sometimes the characters just rip the pen from us.
Yeah, they
both
take
in the writing and art department.
I also think it's very much like the reason I do my setup beforehand is to figure out where like an upload's gonna end, because without that I would just be drawing until whenever, and that doesn't work out very well because my brain starts to die a lot of it. And yeah, so that's sort of where we go from there. But Anima has a second question that's more just a general comic question than a writing inflection question, and it's how long we have been working on the comic, preparing for this comic. So we started in 2020, mid 2020, I think summer 2020, right? Around
summer 2020, yeah.
Summer 2020. At that time, Mars was part-time? Were you part-time at that? With the...
No, I wasn't. I wasn't working anywhere by that point.
Oh, you weren't working anywhere at that point? Okay.
No, that didn't happen until December.
Oh, I see. So Mars didn't have a job. I had a full-time plus job at that point.
This way. I finished my undergrad, and I was kind of not sure what to do with myself because, well, here I am graduated. I planned to take a year off from grad school, but now with 2020 shitting itself in the pants, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with myself. So there's obviously a lot more to it than that, but
I had a full-time job at the time, and I'm gonna call it full-time plus because it was not just full-time. And we were sort of settling in. Yeah, we had both just graduated essentially, either that year or the December the year before, and we decided to work on it. And we sort of knew that I had done a lot of research into like webcomics and people who made them and what they recommend to have a successful one. And a big one of the things was you need to have consistency. Even when nobody's reading it, even when whatever, you have to have a schedule and stick to it. And that is the most important thing because you build sort of trust with your readers that you will update. And one of the worst things is the comic you're reading that you're really enjoying just sort of dies and never comes back. And that's like a very big faux pas, I guess, is that if this is something you actually really want to do, consistency is very important. And so with that, we sort of had the knowledge that we need to have a lot of setup beforehand. we have to put a lot of effort on that front end in order to allow us to have the sort of consistency on the back end, because we wouldn't have it otherwise. We wouldn't have the amount of backlog we have otherwise. So it took us 2.5 years before we released it, and that had a significantly less backlog than our original desired amount of backlog, but we needed a little bit of that, like, okay, we actually have something to keep up now. So that's the whole thing. Yeah, I think that's really it.
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely been a labor of love.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Passion project, no doubt.
Passion project for sure. It's a story that we ourselves would read. It's a story we'd like to see exist.
Mm-hmm. And we love the characters. We fell in love with the characters, fell in love with writing them. It's one of those things, and this was something that was told to me by one of those people that I looked into writing webcomics. Her name is the Starfish Face, and she writes a webcomic called Cast Off. She's been doing it for, I think it's 10 years now, it's 7 years, something like that.
I think we need to add Ori mentions Cast Off to the bingo sheet. This is like the fourth time you've done it.
It's very important as like an inspiration, because she does a lot of how to write a webcomic, how to like make a webcomic that you, if you want to, you should. And so she's like a very big inspiration for me on this comic. Like I still, follow her and listen to her information and all this sort of stuff, because she's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And she was the one who was like, consistency is a big thing. But the other part was that you need to have a project where you miss it if you stop doing it, right? If you need to take a break, that's fine, but you need to then still want to work on it so much that when you do take a break, it's like, I want to work on it. Like, I'm enjoying this break.
Back to it.
Exactly. I had a portion of time where I did take a break because of work and because of everything, and it was one of those things where after about a week, it was like, yeah, I miss drawing the comic. I miss drawing the boys. I miss doing all that stuff and doing it and everything like that. So even though I got to a point where my life was sort of a little burnt out, and I did take a relatively long break, because at that point I really was kind of like, working on it was very much of a job. After about a week, it was like, no. Like, I do want to work on this. I don't want to let this fall. Like, it wasn't even like obligation to Mars at that point. It was, I miss drawing these characters and I miss working on the comic. And so even though sometimes these backgrounds are really a bit of a chore for me, because they're definitely not my favorite part, I still want to do it. And I think that's the most important thing when doing any project like this. There are going to be parts that are not your favorite part of it. There are going to be parts that are, I'd really rather not, but I kind of have to reach a deadline or to move forward or keep doing everything.
And
that's
to like
fine.
give a insight into the writing side of that too. You come across that when writing the script or writing the dialogue. You may come across a scene where it's like, I have no ideas for how this is going to play out. I don't know how to get from point A to point B. I don't know what they're going to say. I need to sit on this for another week and think about it. But man, that deadline's looming.
Yeah, Mars and I have
it happens.
Business meetings every Monday, and there's no doubt that every once in a while I'm like, oh, as like on the list of things we have to do every week is like, oh, did you work on the next script? And she's like, nah, I really just had no ideas. And that's fine. But then when she gets into it, it goes and it happens. And that's sort of the important part, is that keeps coming back.
Hard that I forget to talk during the business meetings.
Yeah. So Animus says that they understand writing and emotions and the dialogue and everything like that, because they like writing, but with comics it's different. And so do you mean that you feel like the writing dialogue is different with a comic, or do you feel that you're struggling with the specific, like, having panels and what art to draw and things like that? Because that depends on who to talk to. So if you have any clarifying questions, we'd love to answer them.
Each of us would have different advice on that.
Yeah, because I really don't do much of the first one. I will say, so the reason I call Mars like a co-writer and and I like say that head writer or like head artist, is that we both do a little bit of the other side as well.
Oh, both.
It's not solely like Mars doesn't come up with the story on her own. We have very long talks about ideas and directions.
It's very much that we bounce ideas off each other. It's just like with the art, I do the flats, but it's Ori who does the sketch, does the lining, does the majority of the work for that. We just kind of help each other along so no one gets stuck for too long in something, I think.
And it's important, I think, to have sort of that say in it. Like how Mars does have this say in what the panel is going to look like, with saying this is growled or this is, sneered, it says with a sneer, and things like that is important, because then it does mean that it's not, I'm just an artist who was hired for a writer to write their story, or Mars is just a writer to, write a story that, my story, right? Like
around
it is our story, right? So I think that's a very important sort of distinction, is that it is a true partnership in making our comic together. It's not, I went, Mars, can you write this story I have because I can't write it? Or Mars came and said, can you illustrate this story I have because I can't draw it? It's definitely, this is something we made together from the ground up.
Yeah. And I think that really strengthens our passion for it, because it's not just one person's project. Like, this is very much a team effort that we both have a lot of love and a lot of wish to see it exist and be a success. Not even be a success, just exist, honestly.
Finish it.
Finished, yes.
Finish
Finished
it.
is good. I like finished.
Um, so Anima says that they feel the dialogue has to change from dialogue with a book, because in a book, you make it up. With a book, you have to make it up yourself, and it has to be way more dramatic. But they feel that with a comic, although you still need to keep it clear and dramatic, the level of drama and type of drama is completely different, because you don't have to imagine it yourself while reading. So that's the dialogue question. How do you feel about that, Mars?
Okay. I'm just going to read over that question again real quick, just to make sure I'm following along.
I think I understood
sorry,
it, but I kind of was reading it and saying it at the same time.
Okay, so I think I see what you're saying, Anima. I'm going to paraphrase and rephrase a little bit here. Is that when you're reading a book, it is all words. It is just words after words, no pictures. You're relying on description, essentially. So there's a lot more left to your imagination. How you imagine a particular scene playing out, even though you're reading the same book, may not align with what another reader has imagined in their mind. Whereas with a comic, you have the visual, the picture,
force them to know
right in front of you. So there's no question about what's happening on screen, I'm gonna say. There's no theater of the mind happening to create that not so much disconnect. I'll say difference. I don't think though that it changes the level of drama per se. And please let me know if I'm misinterpreting your question. But the way I'm understanding it, or the way I'm interpreting it, is that I don't see the change in medium changing the drama or the dramatic parts, because you can very much have a dramatic comic. I think the big difference is typically with a comic, unless you have a running inner monologue from your perspective character, typically the protagonist, you're not getting the main character's personal thoughts all that much. So if you're reading a book from like the first person perspective where they're saying I, me, or even from a third person perspective where you're inside the head of the protagonist, you have that insight. You know what they're thinking. And from that, you're able to envision what expression they're making in that moment. Whereas in a comic, it's reversed. You have the expression first, and you have to interpret from that what's going on in their head, along with the context clues and everything happening around them. I don't think it diminishes the drama at all. I think it's just another method of delivering a story. And each medium has its pros and cons for sure. It can also just come down to personal preference as well. I know some people who don't like reading at all because they say, I have a hard time envisioning what's happening. I'd rather just have it right in front of me and not have to wonder about, well, what does this scene look like? I'm so hung up on this detail, like I can't enjoy the story. Like, I have friends who have said that to me. I think it just depends on your preference at the end of the day. But I think it changes what you're asking your reader to do. If you're looking for that big difference between genres, I think it changes what you're asking your reader to do. Because like I said before, with a book, all the explanation is kind of there, and you're envisioning the expression that goes along with it. Whereas with a comic, you have the expression in front of you, but you may just have maybe a ... or a thought bubble or a quick little sentence that's like, okay, that's what they're saying in the moment, but is that how they actually feel? Well, let me look at the expression and see if that matches up.
I think Anima gets it. Anima's getting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was a very long explanation.
No,
I apologize.
their message just came up, so
I
it wasn't
really liked your question. I really liked your question.
Yeah, no. Their message just came up. They're saying that you have to switch how you view it. You want to be understood the same way, but you have to focus on specific aspects more than the other. It's not that there's less drama and less specification. It's just in different areas of a scene. And I think that does sum it up.
Spot on, Anima. Yeah. I would say that is absolutely spot on. Why isn't this coloring for me?
Second question is for me with the panels and capturing scenes correctly and difficulty. I think the biggest thing, the most important thing to think about when doing panels with a comic is changing the field of view. Right? You can see it very easily here in this example, is that you have close up on dishes and just stuff in the area. There's nobody interacting with it. This sort of sets a time difference, okay? In the episodes before this, they're eating dinner. Now all these plates and empty pots and stuff are sitting around. You can kind of assume that time has progressed. You sort of have those. Later on, we have bigger field of view, right? We're zoomed in on Sinnott, we're zoomed in on Hotsun, and then you have the actual sort of scene about how they're looking at each other. You have these actual big scenes of how they're looking at each other. So it's, sometimes you zoom in on not faces, on body language, because what that's doing is drawing the focus for this whole dialogue thing to a certain aspect. Do I care about the character's facial expression? Then I'm going to focus on their face. Do I really only care about what their body language is? I'm going to focus on their body language. Am I trying to move time forward so the character's interacting with something, putting down a plate, writing? Are the bubbles not dialogue but what they're writing in their journal? Then I'm going to have them writing, maybe even zoomed in on their hand making the words, these sort of things. Other times is that in ones that aren't really drawn because I'm on the background step now, but these are going to be panels of the whole island or food, because they're talking about those things. You found this island. I show the whole wide shot of the island. You found enough food. You show the food, right? So it doesn't matter what the character's expression is. We sort of got that at the beginning. We already have the feel of the emotion that is going through this entire dialogue. Now I'm showing visuals, of sort of things to go along with the dialogue and everything. What are the motions that are important? I zoom in on the hand because that's what happened. He put his hand on his shoulder. So I need you to know that happened. Versus if I just gave this panel where it's from afar, you might not be able to notice, or you might not right away notice that his hand is now on his shoulder, right? You need to sort of focus on the differences there. And that's why the zoom-ins happen where they happen. And the zooms out happen to sort of get a field of the whole thing, set the scene. Those are the sort of things like that.
It also comes down to like helping. I had the phrase and now it's gone.
I'm sorry.
Guiding the eye.
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah.
Leading, whatever you want to call it.
Leading. Thank you. Because it depends, at least, so let's say I gave Ori a panel suggestion. Like, typically I'm not composing panels, but sometimes I will make a suggestion. Like, for this panel, the characters are arguing. So here's some suggestions. Maybe you could have a full panel where one character is standing up and the other is sitting down. And that conveys a power dynamic. The one they're arguing with, the one who's standing up, has more power over this other character. Or you could do it this way. You could split it into two panels. And that way, they are divided by the white space in between those two panels.
Another thing is perspective.
That can help convey something too.
Perspective is a very big one. Showing a character from below makes certain characters like if you're looking up at them, if the camera's looking up at them, that character that's looking at the camera is going to look bigger. If a camera is looking down on a character, the character that's looking at the camera is going to look smaller. Okay, I use this a lot to make Hotsun look very small, because he's already small, but sometimes I make him look very small.
You know, he just needs to be put in his place sometimes.
There's one that I'll show you, because I literally just redrew this panel, and I like it. There's actually a couple of them in this one, actually, where I play with sort of the sizes, the perspectives. So you have this one where it's kind of straight on looking at the ladder, but then you have this one where you're looking down on him from the ladder, so he looks smaller, like even just compared to the ladder, he looks smaller, and that's sort of the vibe there. This other one is this one. Ferrex is not this much taller than Hotsun, but the camera is looking up at him, and thus it makes Hotsun look smaller than Ferrex, right? He is smaller, but he's not that much smaller, and it just makes him look even smaller, because now look at this scene, you know, now they're sort of on more equal footing, right? Well, that's a camera angle.
That's actually a great panel, the one you showed before, because if you look at the dialogue there, from Ferrex, the one you showed before, the dialogue is, "Did you find something we didn't?" Like, think of Hotsun's perspective in this scene. He's alone on an island. He just found out he's not very alone. It's filled with not just pirates, but callers. He's a little put off. He's very intimidated. You kind of read that line a little brashly, you know? Ferrex is getting up in his face. He's looming over him, and that's conveyed by the camera angle and the positioning of the characters. So without that, you might just read that line as, "Did you find something we didn't?" But like in your face. I see that, and I read it as, "Did you find something we didn't?" Yeah. It's a little more brash. It's a little more in your face. Accusatory.
And then when Hotsun sort of comes back at it, that's when they're sort of on the level, right? He's talking back to Ferrex now. He's having sort of a bit of a stand there, and thus now he looks more level with Ferrex, even though technically we're looking over his shoulder, and these sort of things. And then you have a very straight on panel where the power dynamic isn't really like one way or the other. It's relatively even. And then same with, you get down to like Ferrex and Milano. You have here Milano sort of tilting his head up because Ferrex is sort of in this sort of dominant pose, but then when they sort of turn away, he's the one sort of there. It's very straight on. Yeah, cosplay photos is a good way to think about it. Yeah, angle is very important. The other final rule that I will say about panels is don't flip them. And what I mean by that is that if you have like two characters talking to each other, one's on the left and one's on the right, if they're like looking at each other, I of course have none in this one. If you had two that were just right in the profile, like I had Ferrex and Milano in that one I showed before, technically you could show them from the other side of the camera and they would be on the opposite sides of the panel, okay? Right? Because when you go on the other side of them, your left and right switch. That's incredibly freaking confusing. Even if you have amazing backgrounds with a lot of information.
I was about to say, I've heard that you shouldn't do that because it's very disorienting.
Yeah, it's incredibly disorienting. And so I try to even take that a step further, and I try to make it so that characters, if you see here, this is a very good example. Sinet's on the left, Hotsun's on the right in these two separate panels. And then in the one where they're together, I keep it that way. I could easily have had the camera where Hotsun's head is in the bottom left corner and Sinet's in the right. That's a just easy camera angle shift. But I wanted to keep Well, I'm not saying flip the
really
canvas like that,
the
Anima.
flow of the comic.
It's more the idea that when characters are staying still, you want to keep them in the relative sides of the camera, unless you have movement to it, right? If a character gets up, or say, Milano walks around, you can visually show him walking around so that he ends up on the other side, right? That's fine. But if I just suddenly had it where in this panel I have Hotsun like this and send it over here, and then the next panel I rotated the camera so that they're, reversed, and that Hotsun's over here and Sinet's over here, while that still logically makes sense if I draw the background like a 3D space, it's confusing for a reader who's relatively going pretty quick through the whole thing, right? It more looks like Hotsun's got up and moved than I've just moved the camera. So that's sort of like what I'm trying to get there. That's the other final, comic faux pas. I think that's the really big one to keep in mind. And then, yeah, I like to take it a step further where I just try to keep the characters generally on the same side the whole way down, like when needed, when important, when they're technically in the same spot. And that's that best example here where it's like Sinet and Hotsun haven't moved from where they are talking in this panel, from these two panels to this panel, so I keep them on the side. And that means that Hotsun looking away from Sinet, makes sense. He can look away from Sinet in every aspect of it. It always feels like he's looking away. So, I think those are the important pattern things. I hope that helped. I will say, Anima,
I'm glad.
If you are going to do a webcomic, no matter what, it's a lot of work. Hello, Red's Animations. Hello, how are you?
Oh, Red's Animations. Hi.
We're just talking about
Welcome.
making webcomics and stuff, and how it is a lot of work. So definitely.
We do have our main topic tonight, but we are kind of hopping around a little bit.
Oh, we always hop around if you ask comic question. We're definitely here to answer questions.
Absolutely.
The topic is more a general
comics.
Sort of starts the
topic
conversation.
is a launching pad, a springboard essentially.
Ah, dang. Yeah, we're talking about comics. We're making our comic. You make a comic?
Oh yeah?
Nice.
You
don't make animations? No, I'm messing. I'm messing. Animations are hard. Oof. Anyone who makes animations, they're nuts in the good way. Cause boy.
2 hours of work. I feel you, Kaz.
Oh, at least you're finished. Finished, Kaz. I'm sorry that means it's like 3 a.m. for you, but
should really get some sleep there.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Kaz has no actual normal sleep schedule ever. He just sort of exists.
Sounds nice. I sadly have to have a sleep schedule tonight.
How could you?
I know. But
please,
Ori,
go ahead.
I don't know if you had any questions, but yes, Enthuse, please, by all means.
You're not tired? I found out, Anima, that I'm a both person. I can get work done, like relatively tedious, not super creative work done in the morning. I have to. But at sort of 3-4 o'clock, I'm like, now is time to do the creative things, and then I can stay up way too late and be way too awake way too late. And so it's not good for me, if I'm being honest. But oh, lots of shots. That sucks. Hope you're not too sore.
Ooh, ouch. Sleeping all day does sound nice. I will say that.
You do tons of. Well, you got 2 more weeks, Kaz. You know, you can do it.
Hang in
you
there.
do a ton of group commissions, so. Or group work. I don't even know if they're commissions or for your own thing. Yeah, that'll do it, Anima. That'll do it.
I very merely have an outline to send to our
We're a small
our
group, Red.
winner from the first from our Outcast release day. I was so close. I just need to put the
Nice.
touches on it.
Yeah, we're a small community here, Red. But you know, we appreciate everybody who comes out and joins us. Happy to have you. Most are commissions. If you want to read the comic, you should.
Well, I suppose. We have a comic. It's on Webtoon, Tapas Global. We have a Discord.
Did Twitch?
Various Instas.
What's happening here?
Twitch did not die. I can see it.
Okay. Well, apparently it's.
What are you talking about?
Well, apparently it's not. Giving me the Twitch chat in a weird way.
So, Enthuse, great question. The phrase, she didn't say she wanted lemonade. Yes. So I actually had an example of this earlier with the phrase, I want a cookie, because the meaning does change whenever you emphasize a different word. Easiest way to show this in a comic, and you've likely seen this before if you've read basically any book, any comic, is the author will either use italics or bold print. And typically, at least what we do, we bold the word that we want emphasized. What was it earlier? It was caliber. So in that scene, so this is the scene where Hotsun is purchasing the ship from Olus. Olus is very clearly looking down on him. He's kind of scoffing at the idea this guy is purchasing a ship, and he's like, doesn't seem like it's for someone of your caliber. He's putting emphasis on that word, and the reason we're putting emphasis on that word is because we want to show that this guy is basically talking down to Hotsun in every sense of the word. He doesn't think he should be sailing a ship. He doesn't think he should be purchasing a ship. He doesn't respect him. And by putting emphasis on that word, it reinforces that idea.
Exactly.
They really are, Anima.
Especially because you can't have talents in real life.
I like it. Oh, really?
For real life. But yeah.
For real life.
Something else happened and now I've forgotten.
It's very hard to italicize when you verbally speak.
But that's just you doing the inflection on the right thing, right? You really want to do that?
Exactly. Well, so it's interesting what you're doing, because we're going to get into phonetics discussion, people. We're going to get into a phonetics discussion. I hope you're ready, because this is what I am studying.
That's what an italicized word sounds like to me. Do you really want to do that?
Well, you're not wrong, Ori, because you're putting emphasis on the word, or not so much emphasis, but you're drawing attention to that stretched out really. And the way you're doing that is by elongating it. You see this happen with a ton of words. You could be like, so, like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of clues you in, like, this person is procrastinating the question. Maybe this is something they don't want to ask, or maybe this is something they are nervous what the answer will be, and that's why they're drawing it out. So you kind of can pick up on what someone's intention is based on the way they're saying their words, inflections. See, this is one of those points where I'm like, I want to use the word prosody, but no one will know what that means except me.
You are very correct. I will not know what that means.
The struggle is real.
Yeah,
But
italics versus bolding anima. I usually do a bit of both. The reason I do so in the comic is just because I feel that solely italics is not as noticeable as bolded is. So I usually think I put...
when you're going through it very quickly.
Yeah, so it's like caliber, I think, is definitely bolded.
Attention.
It might be italicized, but it's definitely bolded, and that's solely because when you're reading it, it's very obvious that this is where the stress is, right? Someone of your caliber, caliber. But
like, maybe we should pay attention to this word.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know what it is about underlining. Underlining is not nice. It doesn't feel as good. It doesn't...
So, underlining... So, I have particular feelings about underlining.
Yeah, please.
I think it has its place. Where that place is, I personally have not found it.
Oh, that's a very PC preety answer.
I think underlining is better used if it's not so much directly from the character. And what I mean by that is the only time I've seen underlining is when in a book, like, they're referencing a list of some kind, and it's like a list the character themselves actually wrote. So when you see the underline, it's like, the character put that there. This is emphasizing that. And that's the only place where I've seen that work. Now, if you're doing underlining in, let's say, a comic, I don't see that working very well personally, just because of the speed at which you're scrolling. It flies right by, and I think a lot of people would miss it. So that's why I personally prefer bold, because it's a nice, rich, dark color that catches your attention. Your brain picks that up. No, underlining is atrocious used in any other context other than the one I mentioned, because in that case the underlining is saying something about the character. If it's a list and something they underlined, that's saying, the character themselves underlined that this item is very important to them. So that's a character moment.
So I think I can sum up what you're saying very easily. But Red, that's very funny. Just chaos. But
that is hysterical.
Yeah, so and I think I agree with you in the end. When I read bold, when I read italics, I can say in my head, like I can hear in my head somebody saying words bolded, somebody saying words italics, right? Like I can hear, like I said, like how you really want to do that is like, that is the italic version of really. And then versus like, you really want to do that, that's the bold version of really. Like I can hear that, how bold sounds versus italic sounds. I can't hear how underline sounds. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because when you hand write anything, you cannot italicize, so you underline. And it is specifically used for notation. Exactly. Underlining enthused does not make a sound. Underlining is a type of citation that is only used in citation. It's like the title. So okay. Enthused, if you want to get technical, you can if you have a certain style of print, but you don't write italics because nobody can tell the difference depending on the person's handwritings. So when you, a good example is I'm taking a botanical Latin class, and when you write the binomial taxonomical name of a plant, so that's genus and then species, you capitalize genus, you don't capitalize species, and when it's typed out, it's all italics. However, because depending on your handwriting, and especially if you write cursives, I'm pretty sure it started because people wrote cursive, that's all on a slant. You can't italicize cursive writing. So instead of italicizing it, you underline it. So to me, this is, just like when you underline the title of a thing, anything, of a movie, of a book, of when you're making a list and you underline it. It's a very, it's a separator. It has nothing to do with how it sounds.
Has more of a place in research papers
Exactly.
than it does in fiction.
It's a very clerical thing. It doesn't make a noise. And that's where I think the difference is. So where Mars is saying with it was the character wrote a list and it was the printed book version of the character's supposed handwritten list with underlines. That's what it was. It wasn't supposed to make a sound. It was supposed to be essentially a highlighted word.
Yeah.
It was a clue. It wasn't a way to say it.
And that's a very good way of explaining that.
When we so our comic Red is a long form comic. It's a web comic, so it comes out every week. It's not like little short things. It's a what we call a drama. I think that's the best one to say it. It's found family and change and, you know, sort of, I guess, heartwarming in the end, I guess is the whole overarching thing.
Heartwarming in the end.
Yeah.
Our boys are going to get
it's
a
definitely
happy
heartwarming in the end. But it's, you know, people who can change it. Good night, Anima. And hey, Lakatubro.
Night, Anima. And thank you for the fantastic questions. You really got us
always
thinking.
Happy. And, you know, hopefully you do your thing. Spoilers. Enthuse, if you've heard anything about how I feel about media, I feel like you could probably know that most people get up. I wouldn't call it sappy. I definitely wouldn't call it sappy. It's more think about a shonen anime. I would call it a shonen anime.
Yeah.
It's very Avatar: The Last Airbender. You know,
our biggest inspirations were definitely Avatar: The Last Airbender, the Owl House, Amphibia.
Yeah.
So stuff
modern
like that. It, like,
cartoon.
Kind of be episodic, but we
anime
are
inspired things.
And then it's gonna grow from there.
Western cartoons that were inspired by anime, and that's what our comic is inspired by.
Because that is what we enjoy.
That is what we enjoy. I see what you're saying about underlining like a tube, but I would still say that to me it doesn't sound like something. You know, it's not sounding like something. It's a motion that's happening. At very most, because someone's teaching, I can literally see someone drawing their, like, taking the chalk and underlining it as they say it, taking their pointer and underlining it as they say it. It's more of an action.
More of a
it's not a sound.
Tale than something that would happen within a speech bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
I personally would not do that within a speech bubble. I would just have it underlined on the
exactly in a comic
blackboard in the panel.
Yeah, in a comic you don't have a reason to do that. But yeah. That is sort of I think underlining is definitely a motion. It's not a noise. I think is the very best way to put that. Oh yay, it might be working again now.
And it's kind of funny how we kind of all unanimously agree on that, even if we don't know exactly why.
Exactly.
Did you have any questions, Ori, or chat? Anyone? I thought you had mentioned something about having a question, and then we went on a whole tangent.
Mostly I've just been reading chat and doing stuff.
I will finish this Esther tonight, I swear to God.
It definitely sounds like you would have a fun time in a tabletop RPG, Red, if you don't already play one. So Enthuse, you might have just missed it. I think that they sound different. So italicized is
I would agree.
Do you really want to do that? That's italicized. And do you really want to do that? That's bold.
So
pick one.
In news, when it comes to the comic, I personally prefer bold.
It's bold.
Simply for the type of medium, because you're scrolling quickly and your brain is taking in essentially the dialogue and the panels. If you see a deeper, rich color in that speech bubble, your brain is going to focus on that. So I personally prefer that. I think italics, especially with different font choices, could be easy to miss in that format. When it comes to a book, though, you could pretty much go either route and use both. depending on what you're trying to convey. I personally like to use italics to indicate a flashback or a character's inner thoughts when it comes to full-on writing, like a book or a fan fiction or something like that.
So I'm the one who puts in all the bubbles for the comic. I bold always if we're trying to stress something. I will sometimes italics if I want specifically the italic noise. I'll do both. And then it's if the people get it, they get it, but if not, at least you know that this word is important. Which gives a very different vibe than the Ace Attorney wherein they highlight stuff red, because that's more of an underlining thing instead of a stressing thing.
Well, that's also a video game convention as well.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting about that is, look at the medium. You have dialogue boxes and you're clicking a button to scroll through them. Now you're scrolling, maybe you're skipping, but then you see, oh, red, I should stop. This is an important box. I need to read that. Red is the stop color. That's probably why that's used in that particular medium.
Nice doubling up, red. Welcome back, Jamie. And Lakitu, or I think it's Lakitu. Yeah, even if you don't like writing, if you have any art questions as well, if that's where your speed, I can answer those as well. It's Comic Corner, so it's everything. But Lakitu did ask...
We just have a topic as a springboard, that's all.
Yeah, please go ahead, Red. But Lakitu asks, what advice do you have for finding inspiration to write? Do we look at just media we enjoy, like mentioned, or is there any other general advice for looking for that kind of stuff?
So I certainly gravitate towards stories that I myself have appreciated. I'll look at why I appreciate them, what I liked about them, and very often that will be TV shows or something that has stuck with me. For those of you who have been around the last few weeks, I've been going on and on about Vash the Stampede and making comparisons to that over the last 2 streams. And that's because I think it does things in a way that I've seen it done in other genres and other shows. But I just think it's done so brilliantly here. And the reason I can't stop talking about it is because that's a level I myself want to achieve. It's kind of a level of respect in a way. Like, I really respect the writers for not spoon-feeding the audience, letting the audience think about things, kind of interpret the world that they've created. I personally get a lot of enjoyment in being allowed to think about a franchise or being allowed to think about the world that the story exists in. So I very much do appreciate series that allow for theory crafting or just introspection into what's going on. So yeah, TV shows, books, certainly. I mean, I wouldn't be a writer if I didn't enjoy reading. Reading is the gateway drug to being a writer.
Makes sense.
If we're talking specific books, I gotta be honest, I can't really think of anything. When it came to Outcaste, TV shows, storylines were my biggest inspiration because that was the media I have been consuming the most over the last few years. I don't know why it's so damn hard for me to read. Probably because I'm constantly reading articles in school, but that's besides the point. But
we have another question, the side question.
Oh,
what is your favorite dog breed? Red asks. Mine is okay, if I can cop out, it's a mutt. If I can't cop out, it's Jack Russell's.
That is a cop out. That is such a cop out.
No, if it's second, Jack Russell's. We know Red likes pugs. But, Jamie, I'll look the other way about the, I won't. You can info gather. I won't notice. I promise.
So the side question is about favorite dog breeds?
Yeah, what's your favorite dog breed, Mars?
Ooh, my favorite is Samoyeds.
Oh, they're really cute. I do.
They are big, fluffy clouds, and I imagine hugging one is just the best feeling in the world.
They
Grooming
smile.
one
It's great.
I'm not super on board with, but hugging one and just cuddling with one, yes, sign me the hell up, please.
I would not say it's a specific mix, Jamie. My current dog is a Jack Russell something, probably a lot of different things. I think I definitely prescribe to mutts are healthier, but that's mostly my experience. But it kind of works out that way if you don't get one that is really sick off the bat, which is very, very sad. But
don't make me cry.
We're not gonna get into the pet thing again, but yeah, I on the medium smaller side, I'm definitely like a medium dog breed. Cow World, hello. Asks, how would you include
Samoyeds and corgis? Let's go with that.
Oh, corgis are great. I also love dachshunds.
I love corgis. They are walking bread loaves, and they're phenomenal.
I desire to only have mutts for the rest of my life, Jamie, without a doubt. Ooh, black labs are great. Dylan had a black lab for a very long time. It was a black lab golden retriever mix.
You ever work on something and then you zoom out and you're like, shit, this looks good?
Yes, all the time. But
look at this aster wing, guys. I am proud.
M. Cowworld asks, how would you include extensive lore and world building into a linear storyline?
Okay, so I may have to interpret a little bit here. What you mean by linear storyline is a storyline that's focusing on the main cast and just the main cast. Like you're not getting
they have a problem
to other characters or anything like that.
They have a problem writing lots of history and lore. Yeah, rather than focusing on the main storyline.
Oh, I see. Okay. So definitely a way you can do that, because I imagine there's stuff happening around these characters. Well, I could pull up my old favorite example again. I mean, I could.
Yes, it's a very good example.
It is an excellent example. But I'll try to stick with Outcast, at least for now, and maybe I'll transition into that. So how do you work world building and lore into a linear story? So you're focused on the main cast. You're sticking with the main cast this whole time. Probably, so the main cast, I imagine, to have a progressing story, a moving story, because at the end of the day, your characters need to end up in a different place than where they were at the beginning of that story. They need to learn something. They need to change personality wise, or they need to just simply grow as a character in whatever way you determine to be appropriate. If we're talking about learning for a second, if there's something about the world they need to learn, there's plenty of ways to deliver that. They could potentially meet a character that's well versed in that particular knowledge. They could, maybe if it fits into your story, they could go to a library and have a moment there. They could even talk between themselves. Main casts are not static. Typically, or at least what I try to do at the very least, is I'll have a main cast of characters that are very different from each other. Because if you have a main cast of characters where their skill set and who they are is overlapping, you're not going to have much variety, and you're not going to have much experiences, like Ori just said. So you basically want to have characters who are going to make up for each other's weaknesses. Like, for example, going off the learning element, this character maybe doesn't know about this particular thing. Maybe they were sheltered, maybe they just don't have the knowledge, but this other character does. And something character A does maybe prompts them to share this. Maybe they say something and the other character is just like, nope, you're completely wrong about that. It's not a fucking pine tree. And they step in and pass on knowledge. Oh, come on, you knew that was coming.
Coming for me, huh?
I am coming for you, yes. And you get a character moment in there too. If you have a character that's just like, nope, stop everything. You are completely and 100% wrong, and let me tell you why. Well, now we know that character is very proud of the knowledge that they have. They're very prideful of themselves. They're very quick to correct as well. Or maybe they just have a passion for what they know. There's various ways you can work lore into the story, and now I'm going to transition into my favorite example for the past 2 weeks. I'm so sorry for returning people who get to hear about this a third or fourth time now. I've lost count. But the new Trigon 2023, Vash the Stampede, is so good at working oral details.
It's also just good in general.
It's very good in general. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. Vash is amazing. Wolfwood is amazing. Meryl is great. She's getting some awesome character development, and I am here for it. But back to my point before I get completely sidetracked. It's very good at working lore into background details and character dialogue. There is very rarely a moment, except for one particular episode, where it sits you down and explains what's going on. Now, what do I mean by that? So there's one line that's said in the beginning. This is kind of a post-apocalypse world.
This is your favorite line.
Oh, it's my favorite line because not only is it funny, not only does it convey character, not only does it convey world building, it's just such a damn good example. It is literally a line of dialogue doing 3 jobs at once. And it's maybe like
Mars is the writer, not me.
Words at the most. It's so damn good. Oh, guys, when I tell you that writing dialogue that does 2 jobs or more at once is my everything, I'm not kidding. Like, what I would love when Outcast is fully released for people to go back to the beginning and look specifically for the dialogue that was foreshadowing or alluding.
We know Jamie's gonna do this.
Else. Oh, I know Jamie's going to do it. But back to my point, again, I'm getting sidetracked. So, it's an apocalyptic world. It's filled with bounty hunters. The main character is on the run because there's a bounty on him. And guns are a big thing in this world. Again, bounty hunters. So at one point, he runs out of bullets. And the 2 main characters we've been following for a bit, Meryl and Roberto, are like, that's really idiotic. Why don't you have more bullets? And the line Vash says is, well, for the price of, for 2 bullets, for 1 bullet, I could buy 2 pizzas. Not only is that kind of a funny line, you wouldn't really expect the character to say that. And he has such a happy expression when he's saying it too, which just really hits the comedic mark there. But you now have information about this world. Bullets are expensive. You could get 2 pizzas for the price of 1 bullet. They never came out and said, and they could have easily done it. They could have easily had Vash say, well, I don't keep that many bullets around. I can't afford them. They're expensive. Now that gets the same job done, but it's more exposition heavy. It's more explaining than it is an organic way of conveying this fact. And not only that, but we get a little bit of Vash's personality as well. Like, he's holding up a peace sign while he says that. He's gritting as he's saying that. You get the feeling he's kind of a goofy guy and he values pizzas more than bullets. I mean, you get an idea for the character as well. Another very good example. So that's an example of lore working its way, or world building working its way into the dialogue.
And
a way
speaking
of lore.
Good lore, Enthuse asked, since we talk about Atlas so much, who's your favorite Avatar The Last Airbender character and why?
Ooh, okay, I'll answer this one real quick and then I'll explain the very last thing.
Yes, pizza is very good, JB.
Pizza is amazing. I have to take lactose pills to eat it though. But, okay, favorite Atlas character. Oh, geez. okay, so it has been a long time since I've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, but
Mine is very simple and enthused, you might understand.
I really liked Katara. I really liked her story growing up. I really liked how she was just this very comforting presence, but she could also kick ass, like get you a girl who could do both, essentially, which is awesome. Did I say that? I'll have to watch the rewind.
I don't think you did. I think Red's just making jokes. Enthused, I'd like you to guess my favorite. I think it's very easy. It's very easy.
I really liked Katara. I liked how in the beginning she was practicing water bending, like she was trying to grow her own skills on her own, and then she got to a place where she could actually grow her skills. And she was a formidable opponent. Like she was no pushover at all. And I don't know. When did I watch that? Oh gosh, I must have been 7, 8 years old, I think. And I was just watching like a marathon with one of my buddies.
Oh, Zuko.
Yeah, really liked Katara.
Zuko's a good one. Zuko's my second favorite, but Sokka is my favorite.
I love his character development too. Zuko is interesting because I did like him, but it was one of those things where I didn't realize how good his arc was until I delved more into writing and learning how to tell a story. It wasn't until I started watching video essays where I started to realize, oh, that's what they were doing. That's what they were conveying. Because when you're a little kid, that, like, you pick up on the emotions, but the nuances kind of go right over your head. And let's be fair, as a little kid, you're probably not there for that. At least not yet.
It definitely sounds like your friends, Jamie. But yeah, I like Sokka. I like Sokka because he's the smart guy in not the classic smart guy way. Most smart guys are very like the analytical and whatever, but he's this sarcastic goofball that's very, he's not full crossing moron hidden badass because he's not a moron the whole time, but like he's the one making the plans, right? He's the one like pushing it forward and all of these sort of things. He's also very sarcastic and funny and all these sort of things. So I do like him in that way, and he has fun morals and everything. Exactly, it is very tragic, but he does end up having his moments, and those are important to me. Zuko is a very close second. I do love Zuko a lot. However, I can't. Anytime I rewatch Avatar: The Last Airbender, I can't stand Zuko's like season 1 Zuko. I just can't do it. It has honestly nothing to do with the personality. It is solely the hair, and I can't deal with it. I hate it so much. I'm like, please just cut it off. When do we get to the point where you cut it off? Please cut it off.
The true character development was Zuko getting a haircut.
It was bad. Lakitu Bro asks, have either of us run into a situation where we start a project, lose motivation in the middle of it, and either way, what do you think is the best way to move forward? So we talked briefly sort of about how I feel about this. So when I was researching the comic, it was sort of brought up very much that to have a successful comic, you have to, even if you need to take a break from it, want to sort of come back. Return. And want to draw the characters. I think that if you're doing something for passion, you're doing something because you want it, it's not a project that, you're being paid for, or you have to do for school, or you have to do whatever, I think that there are certain things that you have to let die. It's very sad, it's unfortunate, but if you push yourself to do something that you really don't want to do, you're not going to enjoy it. Now, there is a sort of like a nuance to that in the sense of I don't enjoy drawing backgrounds. I really don't. Sometimes they come together real fast. Sometimes I spend way too long on them, and it's just very annoying. Thank you, Cowworld. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. But that does not detract from my desire to make the rest of it, to be able to draw the characters, to be able to tell their story. I have taken breaks from the comic either to go on vacation because I can't bring my digital drawing tablet and I couldn't draw it even if I wanted to, or because there have been certain parts of my life where it is very difficult to find the time and the motivation to do so, I do find that I miss it. I do miss drawing them. And I don't think that this project would have been possible if I didn't miss drawing them. And we're very happy that that worked out this way.
Oh, absolutely. Because it was like initially when we started this, it started off as a buddy type of story where it was like, we have two opposing personalities. How will they survive together? And you know, it was fun for sure, but I was definitely of the mindset of, okay, this is like a fun little thing we're doing, and you know, if it gets done, whoop. If it doesn't, not much lost. But then we changed our genre because we started thinking about the characters more. We started thinking about the plot more. And from there, once the story started growing and building, then it became, oh no, we have to finish this. We cannot let this die, essentially, because now I'll be heartbroken if I lose this.
Exactly. I also think a very important thing that has allowed us as a pair to do this is the fact that we are a duo doing this. I think that when I, have so much respect for the people who make something all on their own, especially something like a comic where it has two very distinct and different parts of it, the writing and the actual art style, that people who do it all on their own have to be both, and that's a lot of work. And on top of that, there are moments, and Mars, correct me if you don't feel this way, but there are moments definitely when I feel sort of insecure about my art. I feel like I'm not doing as good as I could, or that I kind of just have to up and move on from a section because that's just what it is. That's just how good it's going to be in order to keep moving forward through the comic. Otherwise, I would be here forever and just getting more frustrated and upset and annoyed. Having Mars, who is not an artist, being there to be like, oh, wow, this looks awesome, and just all of her reactions to me showing it off is very helpful, because her reactions are going to be much more genuine to the majority of people reading the comic. The majority of people reading comics are not artists, or, are not the same thing. They don't have the same eyes of me viewing it for, 20 plus hours on end in order to do it. I'm noticing every little flaw, versus Mars is reading it like a reader would. She's not going to notice it. And having that sort of reality check is very important.
Ori, I'd be impressed if you put a stick figure in front of me.
But so the point is
that's what happens when you ask someone to evaluate your art who can't draw for shit.
But so it's like, that's the idea, because even if it, she was like an artist and did do a lot more art, just the idea of having somebody else look at it, right? That's here to just sort of, in a way, gas you up and just encourage you that you're doing well and right.
Well,
you, Jane.
It's very funny, Ori, because you just got me thinking in that. So sometimes Ori redoes panels because, like I said, we started this in 2020. So these panels have been being drawn since about maybe 2021.
The first one is finished in 2021. That's what my records say.
First one was finished in 2021. Okay, so yeah, right about that time. And her art style has definitely changed since then. She has moments where she'll send me panels and say, okay, rate these on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being, this is great, this is fine, send it to print. 1 is, this is terrible, looks nothing like the characters, I have to redraw this. And, I still think a lot of it looks fantastic. I will never say it does not look fantastic. It is funny, though, that the more Ori sends to me and the more she explains about perspective, profiles, and consistency,
no, I have to shut up.
Myself looking at things with her perspective.
Oh no!
On art.
You're not allowed to listen anymore. This is not good. Stop. Don't pay attention. Do your own coloring.
No, but it's interesting because you do talk about the art and you do explain what you're going for. It's like, okay, I can look at this and see why it's bothering you. I still think it looks good, but I can see why you think otherwise and why you're so desperate to redo this panel. So that's an interesting growth that has happened. I think this panel is done. Nice.
Yeah, essentially, I like go through
one character,
a comic, you know, an upload, and I sort of look at them and I go, okay, I don't really like that one. I don't really like this one. I don't really like this one. And then I send them off to Mars and I go rate them. And then depending on her score, depends on if I will spend the time to redo them, because it allows me to spend essentially the minimal amount of time redoing them. But it's definitely like certain panels where I'm like, ugh. And there's a certain panels where it's like, I don't care what Mars says. I'm redoing this one. I don't even ask. There was actually one in the entry that was just uploaded on Monday that Mars said was okay, that I redrew anyway because I hated it.
I'm so glad you value my opinion.
Hey, I value it 99% of the time. That's the first time I've done that, where I've redrawn one that's like, she said it was fine and I couldn't stand it.
That's hilarious.
He's not dancing, he's stretching. But have we ever killed off a character? Enthuse asks. How do you deal with death flags, etc.? Plan. So this is our first story together. I have never killed off a character ever.
I mean, I could totally field this question in the sense of fan fiction. So I could totally give hypothetically what I would do if I were about to kill off a character, because like Ori said, this is our first fan fiction. I personally, sorry, comic, Midnight Brain is kicking in.
It's not a fan fiction.
Yeah, I meant to say comic, sorry.
How could you?
What the hell was I saying? Oh yeah. So I could certainly give like a hypothetical way I might do it. Like I said, this is our first comic. I don't think we're planning on killing anyone. I mean, there's certainly going to be comeuppance for the characters that deserve it, but I don't think we'd ever go outright to kill anyone, because in canon, because I have certainly written major character death fan fictions. Sometimes the drama that comes with that, the angst, it gives a chance for the characters to like maybe see a side you've never seen before. That I do, in a sick way, enjoy. But when it comes to canon, I do not like killing off characters. And I think that's because, especially how it's been used over the years, particularly redemption through death is a trope I cannot stand, or the sense that here's a character that's done horrible, awful things, and now they do this one thing, this one self-sacrifice that suddenly puts them in the good books. I qualify that as a cop-out, personally. It feels like a cop-out to me because there are no consequences. There are no repercussions. And I saw a very good quote the other day that really highlighted this point. I follow a couple writing Instagrams. And there was a very good quote that talked about the redemption through death trope, in that it's not redemption because the characters forgive the character who did these awful things. It's redemption because the character that did these awful things learns what they did was wrong, makes the effort to change regardless of if they're forgiven or not.
Don't go and log on me, Jamie. I was traumatized. I was so sad.
No, we
I
are not
think
killing Hotsun.
with
Because Hotsun
my
has so much to learn. And that would just end the journey. Now, I do think death in canon can be used well. Certainly to the tragic effect. In something I just said, you cut a character's journey short. And there's certainly tragedy in that. Because their arc is left incomplete. There's no closure. Any story possibilities, any relations they might have had with other characters is just gone, can't be explored anymore. But it is a big commitment for an author to make, because unless you're planning to, and some stories do this, they have characters come back in various ways, and I'm not even talking like full-on resurrection. In the Warrior Cat series, even though a character dies, these characters can still come back in prophetic dreams. They can still visit through StarClan. So it's like, yeah, they're gone. They're still kind of there offering advice. Like, are they truly gone? It's a commitment. It is a big commitment, because you're shutting down possibilities, essentially. And any character relations, any possible story arcs, anything that could have developed with that character you killed off is just done. No more. Now, how the other characters develop from that could certainly be explored. But that's kind of a shift in focus. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
My biggest thoughts on the matter are, I get very attached very easily. So I very much like characters. However, I don't think that character death is inherently bad. I do think it has gotten to a point in certain times where, Dylan's his least favorite thing is the false sacrifice, the fake out, right? That happens. I think it can obviously be done badly in other ways. I will say I'm a person that would much rather know a character's alive in the end than be upset about a fake sacrifice, because as long as I believe that the character believes they're going to die, I'm okay. But my biggest thing is the character's death, in my opinion, has to be sort of not a loss of hope. That's the thing for me. I like stories that have hope for a better world, or hope that the things in the story are gonna change, or hope that, their legacy will live on, or anything like that. And so the character deaths that I can be, like, okay with are, like I said, Kamina and Gurren Lagann. At very least, even though he's my favorite character and I'm very upset that he died, Simon takes that and does what was set out to be done in the first place, and he succeeds.
Yeah.
Right? And so
the reason it works there is because it's essentially a fake out. You think Kamina's going to be the main character, or at the very least part of the main cast, when it was really Simon the whole time. It was more so a passing of the torch.
Well, see, I don't think you have to have a character not suffer to have hope. I actually think it's better if they have some sort of suffer in the background that has, and then still sort of pushing through. That's just my personal, like, trope that I enjoy, is the idea of, like, you keep on trucking, having those low points where it's like they don't want to keep on trucking, but that they then overcome it, however, and do keep on trucking. I mean, a really good example about...
It's the classic, the night is darkest before the dawn.
I think my biggest thing about character death is that the character death, there has to be a really good reason as to why you have to kill that character off fully, like completely, right? And if it's just for dramatic intense, I'm trying to think of how to word so I can get the example that I want, of that I mean. And it's the idea of that.
Well, you could give the example first, and then that might take you to the name.
Mars and I have been watching Food Wars, and there's no threat of death in Food Wars, but there is threat of being expelled from school, right? But that's the whole storyline. So while you can know as like a watcher that logically in this shonen anime, where the whole point is that the main character is at this school, he won't get expelled from school, the whole idea is still intense, right? The whole sort of the whole process, the whole food war, you know, the whole battle is still intense, even though you know deep down in your heart that he's not getting, like, there's no way that he's just done and kicked out of school. They still
because
manage...
that would be the end of the show.
Exactly. They still manage to make it like a thrilling adventure that, like, oh my god, how is he gonna win? It's a how is he gonna win, right? So the reason that I think character deaths can be really and really just upsetting, that, like, now my favorite character never gets to come back in the story ever again, is that it's like a dramatic thing that happens, and it's like, oh, here's the drama, here's the thing, and it's just like, but did you have to kill them in order to have that same response? And I think most of the time you don't.
I should clarify here, when I say I don't like character deaths in canon, I'm mostly talking about, like, as a fan, I do want my favorite, most loved characters to live. I'm not opposed to character death per se, except when it's done just to wring cheap tears out of the audience. There's certainly an example I can give for that, but I don't. I want to let Ori finish first.
Well, that was really it. Essentially, just the idea that I love the characters so much that the ones that make me feel it's gonna be very sad that they're dead, and unless it's a very good reason as to why this character had to die, I feel like most of the time the story could have progressed just as well, just as good, and I still got to keep that character as, like, a thing I got to experience. I think that's sort of the wrap up I'm trying to get to.
That's an interesting take. I'm just checking chat, making sure we didn't miss anybody's
No, they're just
question.
talking about deaths and all this sort of stuff, and their favorite ways that characters die and all this stuff. I'm just very attached.
Oh.
I'm just incredibly attached. I'm incredibly attached. We'll torture our characters, but we won't kill them.
Oh,
that's the
most
difference.
Definitely. Emotional, physical, it's gonna have it all.
So don't expect it to be just all happy-go-lucky in the comic.
If you think I'm letting any of the characters escape the consequences coming to them, that ain't happening.
One character in particular. Yeah, the consequence. But yeah.
I don't want no consequence. Too bad you are getting consequence. Not escaping via death.
Yeah, I couldn't, that's a very specific kind of person, Jamie. And there are obviously stories like that. I'm not that target audience, unless we're not targeting that audience.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've certainly envisioned scenes where it's like there's a character on the brink, but they would be saved. My
whole thing, my sentiment is still with the idea of, like, even if you're spoiled for something, it should still be impactful, the how you get there and the how to get there, right? So even if you know by us, and this is why I don't think it's a problem by us saying that we wouldn't kill a character, ideally we still make the moments that some people who aren't listening to us right now thinking that character would die, even though you know that they won't, even though you know they have plot armor, that it's still seriously. Because the interaction is the idea. It's not, the goal is not to make the readers believe that it's real. And this is a very big thing on our comic. The goal is not to make the readers believe anything or not notice anything or not do anything. The goal is to make the characters, exactly. The goal is to make you care about how the characters feel about the thing that they're not seeing. Because no matter what, you're seeing more than every individual character is.
We actually do have a twist in our comic that changes the dynamics between the characters. It changes how they interact, and it completely changes the story going forward. It won't happen for a while now, so don't worry too much about it.
That's a start, Red.
We are leaving clues, even within the first few entries, because we did want people to be able to almost predict this, almost be able to see what's being alluded to. Now, it doesn't matter to me if the reader says,
No,
"Oh my gosh,
Mars.
I didn't see that coming. That's so crazy." I don't care about that reaction. I care about the character saying, "What the hell? I did not see that coming."
So there's
because
something.
if the character has the appropriate reaction, that's what matters. That will impact the audience. Because if they're attached to that character, they'll sympathize with how they feel in that moment.
So the reason that Mars and I talk about so much about it is that that we can talk so much about the comic is exactly this reason, right? Well, we don't want to tell you the reveals and the twists and the turns and the unexpected things. There
we
are
definitely
clues,
can't say that.
right? There are clues. I mean, I know I got into media very much on these sort of theory channels, right? Game Theory being a very early one, but others like the Round Table and everything like that, like theorizing about all these shows and all these media things. And that's something that I enjoyed, seeing those clues sort of come to fruition, even if I'm not the person that's necessarily looking for them while I watch the show. I'm definitely a go back and see how it is. I have watched the show Adventure Time 80 bajillion freaking times, and it is incredible at that. You go back and you realize, oh my god, wait, this is that, and it's very crazy, and I enjoy that immensely. So I really like to be able to see that, and that's what we've sort of done with this comic. So the idea is that it'd be cool if it is sort of a little like, ooh, but that's not the goal of the twist, of the reveals, of the anything. It's not to give this sort of...
The goal is not shock value.
Yeah, the goal is not shock. The goal is what it does to the story, what it does to the characters. Because whether or not, like I said before, the readers figure it out, it depends on whether or not the characters figure it out and how they feel about it. Because that's the whole thing, and that's the whole thing of a character-driven story. The idea is not the reader is looking in, no matter what. It's how the characters react to those reveals and those changes and those twists. And that's the goal. That's where the emotion should be. It's a story of, I always mix them up. Empathy? That's the one where you, relate, right?
Yes.
It's a story of empathy. We want you, as the reader, to have emotions because you empathize, or even sympathize because maybe you haven't gone through what they're going through. But, you feel that connection with the character, and thus, even though you saw it coming, or, you knew about this thing before because you saw the characters talk to the side and then this other character, wasn't there, you can still empathize with that character having their own issues. And that's sort of the goal of everything.
Well said. I have nothing to add to that. That pretty much sums up all the thoughts.
Jamie, are you the one who recommended Ocean Boy? Somebody, if it was you, then I think you're fine, because I did read it. And I think if you're the one who recommended Ocean Boy, and I read Ocean Boy, I think you'll be fine with how our story is.
Well, Jamie, it's funny that you say going full M. Night Shyamalan, because actually, no. The twist is not there to make you say, whoa, didn't see that coming. The twist is there to change the character dynamic. That's the difference there. Not super familiar with Professor Layton.
I know of
it's
them.
A puzzle series, and I know there's a crossover with Phoenix Wright. Yeah. It certainly looks cute. I've seen some good fan art.
It's definitely one of those, when we're done with all the Phoenix Wright games, we'll discuss other things.
We got a long way to go.
Yeah, that's true. But yes, Jamie, so if you enjoyed Ocean Boy, which I'm gonna say you did because you recommended it, right, I think that our story will be fine for you. Because that's the whole thing as well with the story, is, yeah, there's a story going on, but it is about the two main characters, and about their experiences going through everything, and them figuring it out. Yeah, character development,
when you realize you just wrote Stand By Me, but with pirates.
I have a guarantee, Enthuse, that we will play every single Phoenix Wright game up through Spirit of Justice, as long as I can get an emulation of Spirit of Justice. I hope to, at that point, that Dylan will by then enjoy it so much that we will get to play Ace Attorney Chronicles, because I do think that'll be very fun. But that is the goal. I do have emulations for Apollo Justice, Dual Destinies, both Miles Edgeworth ones. I did find a English translation of Investigations 2, Prosecutor's Pass,
nice.
so I'm very excited. So very nice. But yes. You have a confession? You haven't seen them all? Or you have seen them all? I don't know. This confession could go either way.
I feel like there should
yes,
be
I got
no
cut up.
here.
Oh, well, enthused. Then you get to experience it along with us. You know, stick around for, years.
Yeah.
It takes to do it. But Mars, Dylan, and I are definitely not going anywhere. And
No.
it was more...
I mean, no plans for that anyway.
It was more Dylan wasn't sure if he wanted to play them, but I think he's having such a good time that certain characters that I have visually seen in Chronicles, he will want to play so bad that he'll have to. Yeah. I think Dylan does have a good time with them in the end, and so I think he'll be happy.
I have hope.
Yeah, Red, that's a place to start, but, you have to think about what you want to do with the character. What would Red do,
Yeah. I know that something that certainly helped the direction of
Sure,
our
Jamie.
story was the whole collar pirate angle. Because we have a world of essentially human-animal hybrids. And admittedly, this was also around the time I just finished watching Brand New Animal earlier that year. So I definitely certainly had like that prejudice idea. And we realized, well, hey, pirates were the outcasts of society back in their day. They were the people who didn't get jobs. They were the minorities. They were basically scorned by society. So that's where we started getting this idea for, what if this is maybe like diet commentary? And then that just completely went out the window as we went completely into the commentary, because there was really no way to avoid that. But it really
I'm going
did help
like
the direction of
Mulan,
our story.
right? Mulan is a very specific story that you can relate to things.
Oh, most definitely.
That's
most
the vibe.
Definitely. You can relate
love
Mulan
Shiro.
to a whole bunch of social issues that we still see nowadays.
Exactly.
Was it made with that intention? I couldn't tell you. I'm not the creator, but it can certainly be interpreted that way. I think as long as the evidence is there, you could make an argument for it. Art is in the eye of the beholder. Whatever you interpret, whatever you resonate with, that is what you are going to see.
Ooh, that's a fun angle, Red. So it could be him sort of
Maybe like traveling to different planets.
well, why it could be like, why is he seeing other Reds in the world? Is there an evil Red that he has to take out? Is he lost and he has to use them in order to get his way home to where he belongs? Is he have to avoid seeing them because of... Yeah, exactly.
Is this a clone thing?
Yeah. Jamie, I was just told the other day that Shiro, that voice actor, Ben Diskin, who did he play that we just learned about, Mars? Didn't we just learn that Ben Diskin played somebody in a show we were watching?
He plays Wolfwood.
Thank you. He's the dub of he's the English dub of Wolfwood in Trigun Stampede 2023.
I don't know if he's the English one. I thought you were talking about the Japanese one. I wasn't looking at chat.
No, you're right. The Japanese one. I think.
No, the
I don't
Japanese
remember.
one.
Is the
The
same?
Japanese one
Okay.
is
No,
the
but
same.
Ben
I
Diskin
have
was in
no
something
idea
else.
about the
Ben Diskin
English
was in
one.
something else that I
Let me look it up real quick.
recently. We'll figure it out. But hold on, there's a bunch of. I am excited for Trials and Tribulations, Lakitu Bro. I have heard that one's good as well. But I'm excited for all of them. I love having a good time. It is very cool, Lakitu Bro. He was something that we just learned about the other day. And that's why I'm like having a brain moment. Oh, he's Bon! That's what I learned in the 7 Deadly Sins.
Oh,
but that wasn't the thing.
Bon! Okay.
Oh, no, not that. It was something I just learned the other day. Okay, it's whatever. He is in a lot of things.
It Next Door.
But,
Oh, he was in Agretzko. Okay.
Yes, I'm excited for that one, Cow World, and I'm excited for, the second one. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by environmental storytelling, Jamie. I don't know if you would have an idea, Mars.
I think by environmental storytelling, you're talking about details about the story hidden in the environment, like background details that aren't explicitly stated, but something the reader can infer. Am I on the money, or am I completely off?
Then Red, maybe his whole journey is to find someone who can tie his shoes, and he just keeps running into other Reds who can't tie his shoes until he finds the one version of Red that does know how to tie his shoes.
Yeah.
But I think this will be the last question, Jamie, if you clarify a little bit. No, he'll never learn? Then I don't know. But we will, we'll wrap up. I sort of glanced at the time. I was like, oh god, okay.
I have an interview tomorrow.
Yeah, it is late here. A story that's more driven by the events/environment than the characters. I think those.
So, I mean, it's definitely possible. I think Mad Max Fury Road is a good example of that, because the characters don't really have too much of a personality. It's just kind of a setup so cool car chases can happen. The environment does a lot of the storytelling. You definitely get an idea for what kind of world this is based on the clothes they're wearing, what the cars look like, the various religions that have sprung up around the area. So it can certainly happen, but I find it very challenging to get a character-driven story out of that, because environmental storytelling, I think, is best when it works in tandem with other kinds of storytelling, and you have two kinds going on side by side. Because, and again, I am certainly not the end-all be-all when it comes to this stuff. Like, there is more than one way of doing something, of course there is, but this is going off of my knowledge, my experience. Environmental stories, I find, are typically for something like disaster stories, where it's an earthquake driving the characters to find shelter. It's a tornado or something like that. You could still certainly get character out of it, for sure, but it's usually not the focus.
Well, that's what Jamie's saying. And Jamie, I think the biggest downfall of environmental driven stories is the investment factor. I think that's the hardest place to sort of get it right, in the sense of that when you have a character, people just innately latch on, right? If you are a person that watches shows, if you're a person that reads comics, if you're a person that reads books, you have like a predisposition of some sort 90% of the time that you will latch on to a character, whether that's the main, the side, the everything like that. Yes, and the reason is, Jamie, because you are already the character. So you're not trying to relate to, You're not trying to relate to a character that's doing their own thing. And depending, I don't think it even matters how much actual agency you have over the story in a video game, but the fact that you are doing anything, that this is you, that these things are happening to you playing the character, that you have to deal with them, I think is the reason that it works out. Putting a character in it and telling a story is a very, that sort of slightly removed. I think it would be very, very hard to get the person then consuming the story who has zero agency at all over what the characters are doing, not even their thoughts, their minds, their anything, as to sort of be invested in the story, because now you just have this bland existing character. How do you do it? I think someone probably could make it work, but I would think that it's one of those sort of there's a reason that you don't see it very often outside of video games. There's a reason that, when you talk about video games, a lot of them are environmentalist story driven. That's true, Cowworld. They say using it to tell something, like convey like a true story, or to convey an idea or opinion.
Oh, certainly.
I think that there's definitely a niche for it, Jamie, but I think there's definitely a reason why it's hard to find really good ones, why a lot of them are video games and not books or movies or, comics and stuff like that, and why they're not the most, why they're definitely much less common than a character-driven story. And I think that is the whole, like I said before, the empathy-sympathy thing, right? You being a person can relate to a relative person in the story, and when no character is safe, it's kind of difficult to sort of latch on and continue going. And this might also just be me, and I think there's definitely space to make stories like that, and I think if that's something you want to do, you should try. But I think it's definitely, I'm not gonna have as much insight into that, and I don't think Mars is either, because both of us are very character-driven story people.
I do enjoy my character-driven stories, because my big thing is I like to convey who these characters are, why they're doing what they're doing, very much like how actual people react. There's a reason we say the things we say. There's a reason we do the things we do, and there's a reason we believe the things we believe. It all comes down to our own personal experiences and life, and that varies wildly from person to person. When you're making a story, you can see how those different personalities, those different experiences just bounce off and work off of each other. And I like seeing that, because you can offer a different perspective to one way of thinking, or you can introduce a new concept entirely. There's lots of possibilities, I find, with that. Would I be opposed to writing an environmental story? I'm not sure if I could do it justice, just because I may struggle to make that interesting, or I might do it in tandem with something that is character driven, like have the environment change around the characters, but still give them agency in their own story, because I still want the characters to feel real. I still want them to feel like they're making their own choices, not that they're pawns moving from point A to point B to make plot happen.
I think more what Jamie's saying, no character is safe, is the idea that there isn't a main character. You follow a world, and then you follow people through it. Infinity Train kind of does that. I don't know if you've seen that, Jamie, but I am sorry to cut everybody off, as it is...
Infinity Train is absolutely a character-driven story. They definitely use creative worlds.
I see, Jamie.
To...
very
upsetting and give them obstacles.
Making the environment a character.
Still very character driven.
But I'm going to cut everybody off because it is 12:25 a.m. for us. I know, Jamie, you have a lot more hours to into the wee night. And Red, I would love to hear about that another time. Unfortunately, we are just wrapping up. so I don't want to go into it, the red verse and everything, but I'd love to hear about that at another time. Thanks everyone for the questions. This is really great. We never usually get this many questions, so this is definitely a great time. And we hope you all enjoyed. And if you think of any other questions, you can even ask them in the Discord, but you can also ask. We do this every Thursday, essentially. Yeah,
Are
I know,
we
Jamie.
on next
We
week?
are not on next Thursday.
Okay,
the next time we will be here
important.
is Sunday for Drawings and Dragons. So you can talk about TTRPG stuff and other things like that. Only for you, Jamie.
I think last Sunday it did turn into a pseudo comic corner, actually.
Yeah, it did. So, the streams definitely start a certain way, but they go however you guys want, because that's the fun part of it. That is it. Next Thursday, I'm away. You'll see it on the schedule and everything. I'm not going to be here next week, so Tuesdays and Thursdays stream next week are just not going to happen. But we'll talk about that more on Sunday. Until then, guys, if you haven't read the comic, you should. It's good, I promise. It's just a fact. It's totally science.
It's good. We're not biased at all.
But and we'll see you guys hopefully on Sunday. Have a nice night.
See you then. Have a good weekend, everyone.